Hello, my dear friends. Today I'm sharing a story that isn't easy to tell. My name is Alex Carter, and I'm 35 years old. I work as a freelance journalist, diving into stories that often push the boundaries of emotions and humanity. My job has given me the privilege of meeting extraordinary people and listening to tales that can both warm your heart and break it. A few months ago, I encountered one of the most chilling, thought provoking, and emotional stories of my career. It was told by a woman named Evelyn Harper, a 32-year-old artist from a small, picturesque town in Montana. Evelyn was the kind of person who carried an air of calm around her, soft spoken with an artistic flair that was evident in her every gesture. But behind her serene demeanor lay a dark secret she shared with me one rainy evening. It was her confession that began with four simple words: I killed my husband. Now, before you jump to conclusions, let me walk you through Evelyn's story just as she told me. Evelyn met her husband Daniel when she was just 24. At the time, she was a budding painter trying to make a name for herself, and Daniel was a charismatic entrepreneur running a tech startup. They were worlds apart in many ways. She thrived in colors and emotions, while he thrived in logic and numbers. But something clicked between them. She described Daniel as someone who could light up a room with his charm. He had this infectious laugh, Evelyn told me, her eyes misting. It was the kind of laugh that made you forget everything bad in the world. They fell in love quickly, and their wedding was a fairy tale. Evelyn's artwork flourished under Daniel's encouragement. He believed in me more than I believed in myself, she said. He bought me my first studio and always made me feel like I was destined for greatness. For a while, their life was perfect. They traveled, hosted dinner parties, and supported each other's dreams. But as Evelyn recounted, the cracks began to show after a few years. Daniel's business started struggling. The stress changed him. The once jovial man became distant and irritable. Evelyn tried to be supportive, but their arguments became more frequent and intense. It was like I didn't recognize him anymore, she said, her voice trembling. One night after a particularly heated argument, Daniel struck her. It was the first time, and Evelyn was in shock. He apologized immediately, she said, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. He cried and begged for forgiveness. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But it didn't stop there. Over the next 2 years, the abuse became a pattern. Evelyn stayed, hoping that the man she fell in love with would return. She blamed herself, thinking that if she were a better wife, he wouldn't lose his temper. The turning point came on a stormy night. Evelyn was working late in her studio when Daniel stormed in, drunk and furious. He accused her of having an affair with a gallery owner, a baseless claim that stemmed from his insecurities. He grabbed one of my paintbrushes and snapped it in half, Evelyn said, tears streaming down her face. And then he came at me. In the chaos that ensued, Evelyn fought back for the first time. She shoved Daniel away and he stumbled. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy sculpture, and swung it in a desperate attempt to protect herself. The next thing she knew, Daniel was lying on the floor, motionless. Blood pooled around him and Evelyn's world shattered. For hours, Evelyn sat in the studio, paralyzed with fear and guilt. She didn't call the police immediately. I didn't know what to do, she admitted. I was terrified they wouldn't believe me, that they'd think I planned it. Eventually, she called 911 and confessed everything. The investigation confirmed that Daniel's death was a result of self-defense, and Evelyn wasn't charged, but the emotional scars remained. As Evelyn shared her story with me, I couldn't help but notice the layers of pain and resilience in her eyes. She wasn't a cold-blooded killer. She was a survivor, someone who had endured unimaginable pain and made a split-second decision to save her own life. "I love Daniel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I had to save myself. And that's a love story, too. A love story for me." Evelyn's story haunted me long after I left her small studio. The way she carried her pain, her guilt, and the faint glimmers of hope beneath it all, it was unlike anything I had encountered before. Her narrative wasn't just about tragedy, it was about survival, and in a way, it was also about rediscovery. Over the following weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I found myself revisiting the recordings of our conversation, hearing her voice tremble as she recounted that fateful night. Evelyn had survived a nightmare, but she was still trapped in its shadows. One day I decided to check in on her. As a journalist, I usually move from one story to the next, but something about Evelyn made me feel like her story wasn't finished yet. When I knocked on her door, she seemed surprised to see me, but welcomed me inside with her characteristic gentleness. Her studio had changed since my last visit. The walls were no longer filled with bright, hopeful paintings of landscapes and abstract dreams. Instead, they were dominated by haunting, raw images, portraits of fear, sorrow, and occasionally resilience. "I've been painting a lot," she said, offering me a cup of tea. "I can see that," I replied, gesturing to a particularly striking canvas. It depicted a woman standing at the edge of a stormy sea, her face obscured but her posture defiant. "Is that you?" Evelyn nodded, her lips curling into a faint smile. "I've been trying to process everything. Art is the only way I know how." We sat in silence for a while, sipping our tea. Then she broke the quiet. "You know, Alex, I didn't think I could ever paint again after what happened. For a long time, I felt like I didn't deserve to create beauty when my life was filled with so much darkness." "But you did," I said. "And these paintings, they're powerful, Evelyn. They tell your truth." As the days turned into weeks, I continued to visit Evelyn, not as a journalist, but as a friend. I learned more about her life before Daniel, about her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, and the small-town gallery owner who first believed in her. Evelyn, in turn, became more open about her struggles. She spoke of the nightmares that still haunted her, the moments of guilt that struck when she least expected it, and the fragile hope she was slowly rebuilding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over her studio, Evelyn showed me a painting she had been working on in secret. It was unlike anything she had created before, an image of a woman walking away from a shattered mirror, her face illuminated by a soft golden light. "This is my future," she said, her voice steady. "I've spent so much time looking back, but I want to start moving forward." Evelyn's journey wasn't linear. There were days when she felt strong and days when the weight of her past threatened to crush her. But she kept painting, kept sharing her story, and slowly she began to heal. She started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others who had faced domestic violence. "If I can make even one person feel less alone," she told me, then everything I went through will have meant something. Months later, Evelyn's art was featured in a local gallery. The exhibition, titled Surviving Shadows, drew crowds from all over the state. Each painting told a piece of her story, capturing the pain, the struggle, and the eventual hope that defined her journey. As I stood in the gallery that evening, surrounded by her work, I realized that Evelyn's story wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. She had taken the darkest parts of her life and turned them into something beautiful, something that could inspire others to find their own strength. And as I watched her stand before a crowd, speaking with quiet confidence about her art and her journey, I knew that Evelyn had found the light she had been searching for. Evelyn's exhibition became the talk of the town. People marveled at her ability to convey such raw emotion through her art. Each piece carried a story, not just hers, but one that resonated with countless others who had faced their own struggles. She had become a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for those who believed they were beyond redemption. One afternoon, I visited her studio, as I often did now. She greeted me with a warm smile, a stark contrast to the haunted look she wore the first time I met her. She seemed lighter, as though the weight of her past was slowly lifting. "Alex," she said, placing a cup of coffee in front of me, "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I want to create a community," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "A space where people can come together to share their stories, their art, their healing journeys, something more than just an exhibition, a movement." I could see the passion in her eyes, and it was contagious. "That's an incredible idea, Evelyn. What would you call it?" She hesitated for a moment before replying, "The Healing Canvas." Because that's what art has been for me, a way to heal, to find myself again. Over the next few months, Evelyn poured herself into this new project. She reached out to local artists, therapists, and advocates, creating a network of people who shared her vision. Together, they transformed an old warehouse into a vibrant community center filled with workshops, gallery spaces, and quiet corners for reflection. The grand opening of the Healing Canvas was a day I'll never forget. The air buzzed with excitement as people from all walks of life gathered to celebrate Evelyn's vision. There were survivors sharing their stories through poetry, artists displaying works that spoke of pain and perseverance, and musicians playing soulful tunes that brought tears to many eyes. Evelyn stood at the center of it all, radiating a quiet strength. When it was her turn to speak, the room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "This space isn't just about art. It's about connection. It's about reminding each other that we're not alone in our struggles and that even in our darkest moments, there's always a way forward." Her words resonated deeply, and as the audience erupted into applause, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Evelyn had come so far, and now she was helping others do the same. As the healing canvas grew, so did Evelyn's influence. She was invited to speak at conferences and appeared on local television to share her journey. Despite the newfound attention, she remained humble, always focusing on the people she was helping rather than herself. One evening, after a particularly successful event, we sat on a bench outside the community center. The night was cool and the stars sparkled above us. "You've created something amazing here," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. Evelyn smiled, looking up at the sky. I couldn't have done it without you, Alex. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I shook my head. You had it in you all along. I just helped you see it. We sat there for a while, reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. Evelyn's journey wasn't just a story of survival, it was a testament to the power of resilience, of turning pain into purpose. Years later, the healing canvas became a national movement, with centers popping up across the country. Evelyn's story continued to inspire countless people, reminding them that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, there was always hope. As for me, I kept writing, documenting stories of resilience and hope, but none ever touched me quite like Evelyn's. She had taught me that healing wasn't just about moving on, it was about transforming, about finding beauty in the broken pieces and building something stronger. Evelyn's story didn't end with her past. It began anew every day, with every person she helped, every life she touched. And in the end, she showed us all that love, in its truest form, has the power to heal even the deepest wounds.